Good evening, friends, and welcome to this press briefing on the ongoing visit of the Federal Chancellor of Germany, Dr. Angela Merkel, to India. As you know, this is her third visit to India, and this is the third intergovernmental consultations that were held today, and as we speak, she is on her way to Bangalore. Foreign Secretary, who's here with me, will give you a broad picture of what transpired today, the kind of discussions that were held, and then we'll open up to questions and answers. Sir, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, this was a relatively unique talks for us, the intergovernmental consultations, because it's the only one which we do with a country. And the difference is that the head of government is accompanied by a number of ministers, vice ministers of state and secretary rank officials. So it is a sort of whole of the government consultation, which is and not simply between the prime ministers in question. Germany does this with 3 other countries, China, Brazil and Israel. We only do it with Germany. We don't do it with anybody else. This is the third time that we are doing it. It's the third intergovernmental consultation. The first time was in 2011. It's done every 2 years. 2013 was the next one, and therefore 2015 is the third one. On this occasion, Chancellor Merkel came with 4 cabinet ministers, 3 parliamentary state secretaries, 3 state secretaries. She also carried a business delegation of about 20 CEOs. Now, before I get down to the details of the talks and the outcomes, just a little bit of background on India-German relations, because since it's an incoming visit, we didn't do a pre-visit briefing. Germany, as many of you know, is the 4th largest economy in the world. It's the 3rd largest global exporter. It's also the 3rd largest foreign investor. So if you look at it from an economic angle, it is obviously a country which is very important for us. By itself, it accounts for 20% of the EU budget. Now, where India and Germany are concerned, we have a fairly large bilateral trade, somewhat in excess of $20 billion. They are a big they're a big investor. Their investment, by last count, is of the tune of 9.7 billion euros FDI in India. There are 1,600 German companies that operate in India. They also provide development assistance. In fact, we are the largest destination for German development assistance. And last year, they had committed 1.2 billion euros as development assistance. Interestingly, we have a large HR relationship with Germany in the sense that a lot of German companies for quite a few years have been outsourcing work to India. And we have a significant number of Indian students in Germany, about 11,000. So as you can see, bilaterally, it's a substantive relationship. It's a very old relationship. A lot of German companies have been here for a long time. Now, on the world stage, also Germany is important. It is the current G7 president. It is a member, of course, of the G8 and the G20. It's a member of all the export control regimes in which we have an interest. Germany was one of the participating countries in the E3+3 negotiations with Iran, which finally led to a solution to the Iran nuclear issue. It is active on the Ukraine negotiations. It's involved in the Middle East, both with Syria and with Iraq. It has had a troop presence in Afghanistan from 2001, which continues. And it's also one of our partners in the G4 initiative for the UN Security Council reform. So as you can see on the international stage, Germany itself has a big profile. It also, from our point of view, has a presence and activity that makes them relevant for us. Now, as Vikas informed you, Chancellor has finished her talks. She's moved to Bangalore. Tomorrow, Prime Minister, as a special gesture, would be going to Bangalore and participating in some of the programs that she will be having, which includes a fairly big business program. Now, in terms of what we seek from Germany, obviously, as I said, Germany is an important nation. Chancellor Merkel has been Chancellor now for more than 10 years, so she's regarded as one of the major world leaders. Germany is relevant for a lot of our developmental initiatives. So if you look at Make in India, or you look at Skill India, Digital India, Namame Gange, solar or renewables program, in all of these, actually, the Germans have a role to play. They are a potential, in some cases, an actual partner. So a lot of our talks, and I'll walk you down the details of that, focused on what role Germany could play as a development partner. They're also important on global issues. They take a lot of interest in the climate change negotiations, on global finance issues. And I would say, on the whole, they are very much a power on the rise. Germany's profile has grown enormously since the reunification of Germany 25 years ago. Today, it's counted among the more influential powers, and clearly, we have an interest in developing our relationship with them. Now, very quickly, in terms of how do they see us, it was interesting that before the Chancellor came here, there was a briefing the German side did in Germany. And they had some interesting things to say. Let me share that with you as well. In terms of the briefing which their National Security Advisor did to the German media, he projected Indian foreign policy in terms of the Prime Minister having switched on an additional gear. So what he was conveying really was that there was much more activity in our foreign policy and diplomacy, and that they saw India as a major power with particular reference to our leadership in the Indian Ocean region. And they noted that there was clearly potential for huge economic growth. And it was quite evident that German industry valued India very much. Now, what we had today was really 3 sessions of talks between the Prime Minister and the Chancellor. A session which was much more political, bilateral, regional, to some extent global politics, a little bit of economics. Then there was the formal IGC, the Inter-governmental consultations. Now, what had happened was that since the Chancellor was accompanied by a number of ministers and secretaries, each one of them held consultations with their counterparts. So the foreign minister met the foreign minister, the defense person met the defense person, defense minister, the HRD minister met her counterpart, the skills development minister met his counterpart, the railway people met, the climate change people met. So there were 12 I would say, separate independent interactions, and they all came together at the intergovernmental consultations. So each one of them reported in to the Prime Minister and the Chancellor what had been achieved in the consultations. So that, this was the point I was making, that it was a relatively unique format which we had adopted. We released 2 statements today. One is a joint statement. I think many of you would have seen that. There was also a separate statement on climate change and energy cooperation. Overall, there were 18 agreements and declarations of intents that were signed and exchanged today. And they really covered a very broad range of areas. In terms of the political issues that came up, very quickly, there was a discussion obviously on our immediate neighborhood, on Afghanistan to some degree, on West Asia, on terrorism, particularly Syria, because as you all know, there's been a flood of refugees from Syria to Europe, and also in the situation in Europe itself. Chancellor gave her perspective of where matters on Ukraine stood. They just had a round of negotiations in Paris. There was a broader sort of discussion on Indian Ocean, Asian security. Then there were some sort of specific issues. Counter-terrorism came up, cyber consultations came up. We have agreed to establish a new policy planning dialogue. The issue of India's multilateral joining the export control regimes came up. Reform of the UN came up. The G4 meeting had just happened. That was when Chancellor and Prime Minister met each other in New York. Climate change also occupied a substantial portion of the discussion. There was a fair amount of talk on the economic side. There was appreciation of the fact that the business climate in India had improved. It was easier to do business, but there were still challenges to be met. The German side was very appreciative of the fact that we have created a German fast-track system where we have this India Invest in DIPP. So India Invest would have a German fast-track mechanism. So they were appreciative of that. Preparatory to the Chancellor's visit, we had a meeting of some other groups, including the High Technology Partnership Group. So some of that came up for mention. Make in India was discussed, including with reference to the defense sector. There was talk of the free trade negotiations which we have ongoing with Germany, with European Union. This is the broad-based trade and investment agreement. So there was an understanding that we would go forward with the negotiations. Though, as many of you are aware, there was an issue of our pharmaceutical exports which had been affected because of an inspection report. So Prime Minister urged the Chancellor to use her influence to ensure that the right decision was made by the regulators in that regard. There was in terms of the other areas which came up, I would say vocational training, skills, railways, renewables, the green corridor. These were among the important issues that came up. Now, very briefly, in terms of the agreements that were signed today, I can just very quickly run you through them. There was an agreement on teaching German as an additional foreign language, as well as teaching modern Indian languages in Germany. There was and one on the development cooperation. Germany would provide additional development cooperation of 1.5 billion euros, which would include Ganga rejuvenation, green energy corridors, as well as Nagpur and Bengaluru metro projects. There was an important agreement, MoU, on the solar partnerships, where Germany would provide concessional loans of 1 billion euros over the next 5 years for solar rooftops, solar parks, and solar off-grid applications. There was an agreement on vocational training, on how to absorb and replicate the German dual training system, and set a roadmap for skills development in India, including the setting up of a national vocational training institution and a Train the Trainers program. There were some interesting security agreements. There was a security cooperation agreement which was very broad-ranging on exchanges of information on terrorist recruitment, on activities, investigating cases, dealing with financing, propaganda, movement to conflict zones, counterfeiting, trafficking, etc. There was one on sky marshals, on-flight security, disaster management. Disaster management is also an area where the Germans have a very strong record on search and rescue operations. They have a great reputation as first responders. So that was also an area where it was felt that both of us could strengthen each other's capabilities through exchanges. There is on the research and education, a lot of time was spent on that. In fact, one of the very strong reports which came in was from the HRD side, the meeting of the HRD minister with her counterpart. So there's already a Indo-German Science and Technology Center. So that has been extended further. That's in Gurgaon. And a partnership on higher education and research was also concluded. There were a number of agreements on the food safety side. This is again an area where Germans are traditionally strong. One on agro-processing. Then cooperation on railways, where we are looking at a number of areas in the railways where where the Germans have capabilities and technology of interest. And one on commercializing of technology. The Germans are particularly good. They have an institution called the Fraunhofer Institute, which is noted, famed for its ability to commercialize technology. So they did an agreement with the Department of Heavy Industry. There will be some business agreements tomorrow, and one on training of managers, exchanges as well. So that broadly was the sort of development for the day. In terms of the, I've sort of covered essentially what the joint statement itself says. In the joint statement on climate change and energy technology cooperation, I think it would interest you to note that the German side welcomed our INDC, which was released on October 2. They were quite appreciative of that. There was an agreement on the importance of climate finance, and we agreed on something called the Indo-German Climate and Renewable Alliance to push forward, to take forward technology, innovation, and finance in the field of climate change. I think I've broadly covered everything. I think I mentioned Make in India as well, with particular emphasis on the defense side. So that's essentially what I have for you, and if you have any questions, I'd be delighted to answer.
Yeah, Ranjit Kumar.
What were the issues taken up under the defense consultations, and like cooperation programs or something like that? And under the Make in India program also, what sector, specifically what sector the German side are discussing? Well,
I think there was on the defense side, there was the discussions essentially covered the business opportunities that would arise out of our defense FDI policy. There were a number of areas where the Germans actually expressed interest. Let me very quickly use my notes to look at that. So I think there was a sort of a broad interest in various materials technology which came up. Licensing issues were discussed, cyber issues were discussed. There was appreciation of the liberalization of FDI, of our Navy-to-Navy cooperation. There are a number of tenders which are global tenders. In some of them, obviously, Germany had an interest, but that would move forward depending on what is the tender outcome. There were a number of tenders.
So this is on the HRD agreement on the teaching of German language in India and modern Indian language in Germany. Can you please elaborate at what stage and what kind of languages? Like in Kendriya Vidyalayas, I believe Germany will be a foreign language, one of the foreign languages.
Well, what we agreed to was that the Goethe Institute and Maximilian Bhavan and the Kendriya Vidyalaya Sanghatan would cooperate on teaching German as an additional foreign language. And they will be entering into a separate detailed MoU on how that is to be done. Side by side with that, we will be working with a body called the Standing Conference of the Ministers of Education and Cultural Affairs of the Länders, the states in Germany, who are the competent institution dealing with higher and school education, on how to promote the teaching of modern Indian languages. So we will do it at that end and they will do it at this end.
Thank you. Good evening. Douglas Basvine from Reuters. I used to work in Germany, and the Conference of Federal States responsible for education, they also decide how you spell in German, which can be trying. I had a question concerning trade. Obviously, you referenced the joint declaration, which commits to early resumption of talks on the European Union-India Free Trade Agreement. Still, things seem to be going pretty slowly, and we're hearing news out of the United States this evening that the Trans-Pacific Partnership is close to completion. So my question really is India showing maybe moving rather slowly on the trade front when other countries are pressing ahead far faster? And do you have a reaction? I know it's not a yet official announcement, but we've reported it. Do you have any comment on the progress on TPP?
Well, I don't see a connection, frankly, between the TPP and what we are negotiating with the EU. In terms of the pace at which we are negotiating with the EU, I think it apparently takes two hands to not only clap, but the pace at which you clap depends on both the hands. So there are issues there which need to be resolved. In fact, some of them did come up for detailed discussions, including data security. So that's one of the outstanding issues. But you're also aware that the restrictions which have been placed on the sale of about 700 odd drugs from India in Europe, which in our view is unwarranted, was an obstacle to the negotiations moving forward. This has been the subject of, it was a subject of discussion today. I should also share with you it was the subject of discussions which the Prime Minister had with some of the European leaders he met as well in New York. So it's our hope that this matter would be looked at fairly and sensibly, and hopefully would not be an impediment to the free trade agreement moving forward.
Just a follow-up to his question, though it's not directly related to the visit of the Chancellor. Would India really look at TPP as a possible, grouping that it could enter into, since we are talking about an increased role in the Pacific region, in terms of our security role there?
No, look, I think as a general rule, it's good to stick to the idea that the question should be related to what is said at a press conference. So when I do a TPP press conference, I'd be delighted to answer that question.
Good evening, sir. Nadima from Business Standard. On data security, was there any assurance from Germany that India might get that data secured status that it has been, long demanding for? And also, was there any sort of any rough roadmap on the India-EU FTA when the talks will probably resume, when the chief negotiators or probably the commerce ministers will meet? Anything on that?
No, look, the matter came up, when leaders meet and discuss issues, they leave it to people like us to really follow up and kind of work out the details. So those things will happen in due course. So what did happen today was a broad, was I would say a Prime Minister Chancellor level discussion on the merits of resuming the negotiation and taking it forward, and what were the challenges in the process, of which data security was an example of what I gave you. Ultimately, when in terms of how things happen and both the timelines and the details, that's really when the negotiators meet.
Geeta Mohan.
You said that immediate neighborhood was discussed, particularly Afghanistan, but was there any mention of Pakistan, or for that matter security situation and the concerns India has with regards to terrorism emanating from Pakistan? Also on the defense side, who represented Germany, given that the defense minister dropped out last minute?
I think first of all, she didn't drop out last minute. I myself was aware quite a few days ago that she wasn't coming because she had a commitment elsewhere, and that happens. I mean, we also had some ministers who had other commitments and couldn't make it for the IGC. My recollection is, let me just look at the list. Yeah, it was the State Secretary in the Ministry of Defense, Parliamentary State Secretary, like the MoUs, who came for that. In terms of neighborhood, yes, neighborhood was discussed, including the parts of the neighborhood to the west of us. Yes, terrorism was discussed. Yes, Afghanistan was discussed. Okay?
Okay.
Sir, I believe the German side has given back to India one of the stolen antique piece.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on the background, how it was stolen, from where it has been given?
It's a Mahishasura Mardani statue, which I think its origin is from Jammu and Kashmir. And it was given by the state of Baden-Württemberg. They were the people they were the state government who agreed to return the statue. This statue was illegally exported from India by an illegal art dealer. Once we knew that it was there, it was something which we as a government had taken up and pursued, and the case for its return was recognized. And I think Prime Minister, you would have seen Prime Minister actually at his press statement expressed particular appreciation of the fact.
Yeah, Naz Asghar.
Thank you. I am coming back again to India EU. I am coming back again to India EU FTA negotiations. Besides this data entry and pharmaceuticals, what were the other sticking points in these negotiations that you discussed today?
No, you see, this was not a trade negotiation. The sticking points and the details would. It is when the negotiations would resume that you will get all of that. Today there was a broad review of the state of our relations, including the state of our trade relations, and the merits of resuming the negotiations on the BTIA were assessed by the Prime Minister and the Chancellor. So it was a kind of a big picture view of why we should go forward. They weren't, Prime Ministers do not get into that kind of detailed negotiation. That's for trade negotiators to do.
Sir, was there any proposal to, in fact, form up a mutual legal assistance treaty between the two countries? And is it that, in fact, it could not be finalized because Germany opposed to India's death penalty, in fact?
Opposed to?
I mean, the provision of having death penalty in Indian statute.
I frankly do not have a sense that MLAT was on the horizon in the last few weeks and somehow got stuck at the last minute. No, that's not my recollection.
This is Parsa Venkateshwara from DNA. Some time back, there was a controversy about the teaching of German in the Indian schools. Is this new agreement a continuation of old one, or is it starting ab initio?
Well, I think it's fairly clear from the declaration of intent that they have to conclude an agreement with the KVS and Goethe Institute, Max Müller-Berman, have to conclude an agreement. So to me, it would seem like a fresh start. I mean, that would be my common sense interpretation. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Oh, okay.
So, when you were speaking about Pakistan, you said terror was discussed. Can you tell us what the German view is? So, and also in another forum, the Germans had expressed an interest in helping India to build submarines. Did the issue come up?
You see, what I would like to do at a briefing is give you a broad sense of what was discussed. As you would notice, it's not right for me to characterize, or attribute opinions in detail to one party or the other. So, when there was a exchange of assessments on our neighborhood, obviously the issue of terrorism did come up. So, I think it would be fair for me to leave it at that. In terms of your other question, I think in the context of defense cooperation and Make in India and all that was happening, a number of defense tenders, did come up, and you probably know the defense tenders better than I do. Thank you.
Thank you. That